Reddit by Reddit recap. Shy introverted people of Reddit, what is the furthest you've ever gone to avoid human interaction? In high school I didn't have a car, so I walked home. I used to just fast walk to try to beat the crowd of people. But I just didn't want to deal with it anymore, so I would stay in the computer lab sometimes and ask my dad to pick me up a few hours later. So once the bell rang to go home, I would just stay in class since I had computers last. The teacher would forget I was in there, not even notice me, and then turn the lights off, lock the door, then leave. Honestly, I didn't mind at all. I got to play video games by myself, and one time about an hour and a half later the janitor came in and I guess I scared him. He turned the lights on and literally screamed when he saw me. Night janitor is probably also an antisocial person. Loves his quiet nights. No kids. Just him. The quiet. And the mop. I'm not as shy and introverted as I used to be. But now I have moods where I do not even want to see a single person until the mood has passed. When I was living in dorms in college, I would stand in my closet or bathroom for hours just so I wouldn't have to see the people talking in my room. I ended up hearing a lot of conversations I shouldn't have heard because nobody ever knew I was there, lol. I stopped talking for an entire year of school. 5th grade. To be precise. 6th grade. Hey, what's up guys? Friends, dude, what the F? You can talk. I have phone anxiety. I was going to drive 1.5 hours to my college to talk to them in person over the summer instead of just calling to follow up on something. I'm not really introverted or shy, but I hate phone calls. I never know what to say, and I always end up talking over people when they pick up. I also dread leaving voicemails. They always sound stupid. When I was in the military I volunteered for a deployment to get out of going to a wedding. MREs and random rockets, mortars, wedding receptions. When I was 12, a man in a suit I didn't know knocked on the door. I could see him through the front room window, so I hid behind the chair. Looked up to see if he had gone. Made eye contact. Stayed where I was. Wasn't the last time it happened. I'm 29. Guy knocked on my door and I looked out the peephole and he was looking directly, gazing into it back at me, so I ducked and crouched at the base of the door, and then he opened the mail slot to look in, which was right above me, and I just laid on the ground until he went away. That was yourself from the future. I went to an empty room and stood in the dark for 45 minutes to avoid a team bonding event. Team bonding is the absolute worst for an introvert. I'm 95% sure I've done that at least 5 times this year. I once spent a weekend in a hotel because I just wanted to be alone and chill. Reading books and watching TV. The people I lived with at the time couldn't spend more than an hour on their own with some sort of social interaction. The roomie I have now is like-minded and we can go days without talking, seeing each other, and it's great. Best friend I ever had. We still never talk sometimes. I wear headphones all the time. Even if they are off, not plugged in. I'm so much more productive at work. People at the gym let me be. And people on the street leave me alone on my walk home. I never answer the door unless I'm expecting someone. Just today actually. My neighbor was knocking on my door this morning and I didn't answer. When it was time to head to work I realized I didn't have my keys. I think my neighbor found them and was trying to return them. Update. Sure enough, I left my keys in the door last night and my neighbor was nice enough to try to return them. But since I never answer my door, he took them to the front office. Let this be a lesson to my fellow introverts. Don't leave your keys in your door. I ignore knocks on my door too for the most part. But that's because my upstairs neighbor will walk in when I open the door. Then proceed to effing stay and talk for a effing hour even if I'm in the middle of dinner. College. Had to attend an out-of-town conference with my classmates as part of the requirements for a course. My professor had booked a block of rooms at the hotel where the conference was held. And people were going to put 3-4 guys or girls to a room and split the cost. My classmates had a bunch of socializing and bar hopping planned. Which sounds like my idea of a living hell. Also, all of them carpool together in groups. I honestly would have rather walked barefoot across a mile of Lagos than to be held hostage in a car for 4 hours with people I barely know. A few people asked if I wanted to carpool with them and what room I was in, and I said oh. Thank you so much. I'm actually staying with a friend in town though. And I'm stoked to see her. I'm going to have to take my own car so I can drive to the conference. I'll catch you guys there. So I wouldn't come off as a weirdo. But I actually reserved a room at another hotel way across town. Attended the bare minimum of the conference. And enjoyed as many coffee shops, art museums, downtown shopping trips, and nature trails as I could. Completely relatable. I went on a 3-week camping trip to avoid 2 family reunions. I fully support your methods and reasoning. Going to cross the street, but then stopping and pretending I don't have to if there's a car approaching so I don't inconvenience them. I do this, but it's because I don't trust people to actually pay attention and stop to avoid running me over. So I always try to leave enough space that they don't need to slow down. In 7th grade I would hide in the science lab during lunch and recess time and feed and play with the school pets. I would ask to use the bathroom around 10 minutes into lunch and then come back in the last 2 minutes. They probably thought I had some real bad bowel issues. They were 2 birds, a bunny, and 2 guinea pigs. I would feed them carrots and talk to them. Nobody knew that I was there for half of the year. When one of my teachers finally walked in on me I thought I was busted. Luckily she was one of the nicer ones and made it my official job to play with and feed the animals. The hero we deserve. I was getting a taxi back home and must have mumbled or garbled my destination because it was quite clear he was going to a completely different place. Like, literally as soon as he turned right out of the parking lot instead of left. I literally let the guy drive for 15 minutes in the wrong direction. Eventually just blurting out anywhere here will do and giving him a tenner. And then just walking aimlessly until I found a public transport I recognized and jumped on that. A 10-minute cab drive turned into a nearly 2-hour journey home. My roommate threw a party at my house and I hid from everyone. There's only one front door and everyone would see me if I left and would want to talk to me. I avoided eating that whole night because I didn't want to walk by the party to get food. My car was trapped between other cars. I ended up jumping out of a 2nd-story window and walking 3 miles to a 7-Eleven. Was 5 minutes late to school so I decided to skip school altogether that day to avoid the awkward class entry. I've done this multiple times. Going through the drive-thru just to park and eat alone in my car. Rather than associate with my nosy aunt when I lived with her. I told her I was going out for a while. Moved my car up the street. And sat in it watching Netflix on my phone for a couple hours. I routinely cross streets or turn down streets that are in the wrong direction of where I'm going to avoid awkward interactions with vehicles as a pedestrian. Please don't stop and give me that it's okay to go wave when there's still traffic barreling down the opposite side of the street and you're the only vehicle trying to be courteous. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but it would be easier for everyone if you just kept driving. Getting off the bus at the wrong stop and walking because I pressed the stop button too soon and didn't want to tell the driver. Back when I had roommates I didn't know very well. I'd spend all day in my room without meals to avoid awkward pleasantries. Then I'd get really hungry, but the prospect of explaining why I'd spent all day in my room kept me inside. Then they'd text me and ask if I was okay. And I'd say yep. Just keeping busy with some projects. And they'd ask if I'd eaten anything since they hadn't seen me. And I'd say yep. Trust me. I'd never go without food. Then I'd wake up at midnight and steal my own food from the fridge. I've done the same thing, except I already knew my roommate pretty well. He just had some company over that I did not want to talk to, so I stayed in my room for 2 days except for at like 3 or 4 in the morning when I would sneak out to get food from 24-hour fast food joints. Lived in a loft downtown on the 3rd floor. The amount of times I use the stairs in effort to not being trapped on an elevator with a stranger is too many to count. One time there was a family moving in. I walked all the way around the building to the opposite side's entrance to get into the building. Then they were using the elevators. So I took the stairs. Then they were on my floor moving shin. I didn't want it to look like I was trying this hard to avoid them. So I said, "Whoops. Wrong floor," and walked up 2 extra floors and waited 10 minutes before going back down to see if they were gone. What should have taken me 5 minutes took me close to 30 to get in my apartment. That's when I realized I might have a problem. Okay folks, that's a wrap. This clearly won. Best comment of the day. I'm Chinese, and one time a tourist asked me for directions. I just said no, speak English in a really heavy accent, which didn't even sound much like a genuine Chinese accent, and walked away. Another time, a homeless person approached me and asked me, "Can I ask you a polite question?" Now for context, I've seen this dude a couple of times before. I know what his shtick is. He'll ask you if he can ask a really polite question, and if you say yes, he'll tell you about some injuries he has and how he got them, and then he'll ask you for money. If you say no, he immediately becomes rude. I had my headphones on, so I just continued walking, as if I couldn't hear him. This dude starts following me and says, "Can I ask you a really polite question?" with a really impolite tone of voice. I keep walking, and eventually he stops following me. To be clear, I have nothing against homeless people. I think it's a shame that we live in a world where people can even be homeless in the first place. But I really don't like the way in which this specific guy goes around asking for money. There have also been a few times where I've seen an old friend, and I'll intentionally try to avoid them. I would love to reconnect with them, but it's been a long time since I've had meaningful conversation with any of them, and I'm terrible at small talking in general. I don't want to appear as awkward, and I don't want to leave a negative impression on them, so I choose to avoid them.